Welcome to the Morning Smiles podcast. Morning Smiles isn't just a podcast. It's a movement from the visionaries behind Sober Life Rocks. Join us for stories and discussions that celebrate conscious living and, most importantly, keeping you smiling. Whether you're on your commute to or from work or just seeking some inspiration, we're here to make sure that you have a bright part of your day. So stay positive and remember, making the right choices today means smiling tomorrow. We are on this journey together with Morning Smiles.
Good morning. I'm Margie Schaller, co-founder of Sober Life Rocks, and I want to welcome you today and let you know that you are not alone. How many of you have been in those situations where the alcohol-forward events at conferences or business parties have made you feel isolated? I know I have. But through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you who choose not to drink or drink less can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice. So let's get this conversation started. I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Chris Marshall. He is the visionary founder of Sans Bar, which was the first all non-alcoholic bar in North America. He's a renowned mental health and advocate and writer who's dedicated his career to building inclusive, alcohol-free communities. Right up our alley, right? Now, Chris has been alcohol-free since 2007 and began his work as a substance use counselor in 2009. His passion for supporting those in recovery led him to create Sans Bar in 2017, and it's located in Austin, Texas. Now, Chris has gained national recognition for his innovative approach to building sober communities, and he's been featured in major publications including Men's Health, the New York Times, and USA Today. He's an accomplished speaker. He's been invited to share his insights at events such as the Aspen Ideas Festival. With a track record of success in mental advocacy and community building, Chris is a leading voice in the movement to create more inclusive spaces for those seeking a sober lifestyle. And Chris, there's just no better person than I could think of to join us on this Morning Smiles podcast, which is part of our Sober Life Rocks community. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me on, Margie. I'm so glad to be here this morning.
Absolutely. So I am sure that other people would love to hear a little bit about your story. As I mentioned in the bio, you got sober 17 years ago, almost.
Yeah.
And so I just love to hear a little bit, like an abbreviated version of kind of that story and how you came to get sober, and take us from there.
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you for having me on. This is going to be such an amazing time together. And I think the work that you're doing is just remarkable. So I just want to say that before we get started.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think don't have that wild of an origin story. I started off drinking like most people do as a teenager. Did not really picture myself drinking. I thought I was going to wait till I was 21. That was just a personal goal of mine, but I quickly erased that goal once I saw that other people were drinking in high school and saw that it was the currency of connection as a teenager. And I abandoned my own, goal and picked up my first drink at 16. And immediately the people around me, my friends who had, I think that wasn't their first time drinking, but it was my first time drinking. I felt this amazing connection. They felt nothing. They felt like it was any other Friday night in a small town in Texas. But for me, it was this monumental experience. And I felt almost this religious wash of like,
you're one of the cool kids now, right?
Yeah, like it was an initiation into what I believed was an adulthood, but also in many ways just acceptance. I think that was always the outside looking in kind of kid, and so to have this moment, this crossing of the event horizon of adulthood was this moment for me. And again, I've gone back and talked to those friends since, and they have no recollection of that night. That meant nothing to them. It meant everything to me. It meant. So I started off that way. Like that's how my relationship with alcohol began, was this understanding that it was transactional, and I would consume it, and in turn it would give me community, it would give me connection, it would give me all the things that I demanded of it to provide for me. As anyone can imagine, at some point alcohol just stops working as a device to connect. And what I learned since that, all those things I thought it was giving me, it was the illusion of those things. So it was the
Yeah.
illusion of connection. It was the illusion of confidence. It was the illusion of tighter friendships. I wasn't making those things happen. It just was the sense that it was transpiring. So I barely made it through high school. I got my first DUI at 16.
Well, you're a
And
fast learner.
yes, I quickly excelled in the school of alcohol misuse.
Yeah.
That's about the only school I was excelling in, because I literally graduated high school in the summer school program. I
Mhm.
got to walk across the stage because I was a likable kid. People liked me, but I wasn't. I barely graduated. Even then. So I made it to college, and it was much of the same thing. But then it started to change a bit. The people around me uh were in fraternities. Like I was in a fraternity, they were in fraternity, they were about my age, they were away from home for the first time. But the way that I was drinking was not like everyone else. And even at that age, at 18, 19, people could see that my drinking was not like everyone else's. Um, and again, the
Yeah.
more, go ahead.
I was the chug champ of my sorority.
Yeah. I found myself uh cleaning up after these frat parties, and it would be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just drinking like empty cans off the bars and the tables in every room. Like I was that kind of person who just really didn't have an off switch. And so most importantly, I think that the biggest lesson out of that time in my life is that I kept demanding alcohol give me connection, give me confidence, give me the ability to get up in front of a group of people and do a presentation. I kept demanding alcohol to do something it was not designed to do.
Mm.
It was never designed to give me anything. It was designed to numb my central nervous system. That is the point of it. It dims the prefrontal cortex, right? So I don't make great decisions. Like that's its job. And I kept asking it to do something it was not capable of doing. So, and stop me if you heard this one before, but eventually it got worse. um, it, it got worse, and I checked myself into rehab for the first time at 23.
Wow. That's a really fast story. I mean, I started my first drink at 8, and I wasn't in my first rehab or only rehab really until my late 30s. So you went at it.
Like you said, I like to excel quickly, and when I take to something, boy, I take to it. And I really just thought that if I just drink enough alcohol, and I mean this sincerely, and I mean this sincerely, I thought if I just drank enough alcohol, I could feel like I belonged. I could feel like I was a cool person. I really did believe that. I mean, I say
Mhm.
it anecdotally now as a 40-year-old man, but I think as a 20-year-old kid, I really fully believed and expected alcohol to be my friend and to get me through these things. And I just kept drinking more and more, and I wasn't getting the same result. I was not feeling any more confident. I would wake up the
Yeah.
next morning after a binge in an absolute sweat. I was afraid to open my own door. So the confidence that I felt it had given me in the beginning had been taken away and been replaced by this massive wall of anxiety every single day. I woke up without alcohol.
Okay, so I totally relate to that feeling. So here's what I want to ask is now you go to treatment, now you get sober. How do you deal with the fact that you're still having those feelings of wanting to belong, still feeling that anxiety? Like what happens then?
Mm. I think what happened, just go back a bit in treatment. I wasn't sure I wanted to stop drinking last time I went to treatment. In fact, I had every plan to go back to drinking. It was about this time. In fact, it was about this time 17 years ago. I got sober February 16th, 2007. So it was about the end of this,
Mhm.
January, beginning of February, that I felt like I had to go to treatment only to appease the people in my life. Like I wasn't done. I wasn't ready to stop. And so I think the catalyst was while I was in treatment and I was doing aftercare, I just saw people living a life that I wanted. I saw people connecting in community. And it was the first time a group of people kind of coalesced around. There was these alumni, and they kind of coalesced around me and just offered me an opportunity to join in community. And I was anxious. I mean, I was literally anxious. I couldn't drive. I was afraid of driving. I'd have a anxiety attack if I was called on to share in a meeting. Like there was real anxiety there, but these people just kept loving on me and supporting me. So to answer your question, the catalyst between that anxious, the ball of anxiety kid who felt disconnected and never part of society, the way that I felt safe again and so felt okay again in my own skin was the value of community,
And the sober community
in the sober
specifically.
community. Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah. I remember when I was in treatment and I didn't really believe that I was like everybody else. I mean, it was clear alcohol had gotten away from me, but there were people who were just ripped to shreds in their life. And that wasn't me. And I remember an alumni came and spoke, and they were talking about the house that they had and the wife and kids that they had and the cars that they had and this amazing job that they had and the boat that they had out front and the vacations that they got to take. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I have that. Yeah, I have that. Well, I don't have a boat, but I mean, I had a lot of those things. But then they talked about this idea that they had something that they'd never had before, which was themselves.
Mhm.
And this feeling of knowing who they were, what they cared about, what they liked doing, what they didn't like doing, and that they had choice in their life again. And that's what just hit me square between the eyeballs. I thought, oof, I have no idea what that's about.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
I love
that's
that.
when, for me, I realized like that's what I want.
Mhm.
Because alcohol had robbed me of my developmental stages of everything. First by having an alcoholic mother, and then by starting drinking really in dibbles and dabbles when I was about 8, and then hardcore from the time that I was in middle school and onward. So, we all lose something. We're all seeking something, and it's the people in the sober community for me who held up that mirror and helped me get to know myself as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. I thank you for sharing that. And the thing you said about hearing those people talk about the houses and the cars and the life. At 23, I heard those things, and I was like, I don't have that. I don't have that, and I shouldn't have. I'm 23. I shouldn't have those things. But what someone, and I don't remember who it was at this point, but someone kind of helped me to realize like, and you'll never get those things if you keep doing what you're doing. And I was one of those people that was, um, you mentioned how young I was. It wasn't for lack of trying. Like if I were anyone else, I would have loved to stop drinking in my 30s or 40s. That was the plan. I was just on a different path, and it was just a wildfire. I couldn't make it. Couldn't last another couple decades. I wasn't gonna make it. So I love that piece about like the what you're missing isn't the things, it's you. And
Yeah,
what you gain when you stop drinking, no matter how old or young you are, no matter how much you have or how much you don't have, what you gain is you.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so 2007, and I know that you started Sans Bar in 2017, and I'm going to get to that moment in a second, but fill us in the decade in between. What was happening there?
First of all, it's just wild to think that there was a decade in between those 2 points in my life because uh, so much transpired in that decade. So yeah, part of my journey was to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I did not anticipate living past 25. I was 23. I was like, at this point, I already had elevated liver enzymes. Like I was not doing well. I did not expect to live. So now that I'm sober, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm gonna live. I better figure. Oh, I didn't plan on that. Well, what should I do with my life? And went back to school, became a substance use counselor, and I fell in love. I absolutely love
Mm,
being a counselor. Um, so it made sense now. Like this deep empathy that I have. That's why I always feel so different because I felt like the ability to feel deeply was a problem, was some kind of deficit or disability. And it's not. It's a gift. It's a superpower.
Mm.
And when I'm able to use that in the right way and point it at anyone else but myself, right? To feel, because when I point that at myself, I start to feel deeply depressed. But when I feel for other people, and I create through healthy boundaries, I create relationships that are meaningful. It was just so much easier to build rapport with clients, to share, to just lead people through the hardest moments of their life. That
Mhm.
was a real joy of mine, and I'd been preparing for that my whole life. I didn't know it, but it was like, so it was this beautiful thing. I loved being a counselor, and as I was working as a counselor, I just kept hearing the same thing over and over again. No matter how significant the alcohol use disorder was, everyone would say it's a connection thing. It's a connection thing to some degree or another. Like, I drink because I want to connect with my partner. I drink because I want to do karaoke. I drink because I'm a lawyer and attorneys have to go to these happy hours and consume lots of alcohol. There was always a connection piece throughout all the things I was hearing as a clinician. And so the more I heard that, the more I was like, okay, there has to be a solution to this, because that's what I was looking for. In that small Texas town at 16, I was
Mhm.
looking for connection. That's why I violated my own rule. Like, I broke my own promise to myself to drink because of connection. So that kind of began to this idea of like a space that was dedicated to people who were seeking deep connection sans alcohol began to ferment, for like a better word, in my mind. And in 2017, sans where I was born.
Okay, so I love that business about looking for some way to connect together, but I know from reading about you that you had zero experience running any kind of bar or food and beverage at all.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what in the world would make you think you can do that? And what, I mean, really, tell me what happened there.
I think I chalk it up to I mean, and I mean this in the best sense of the word, ignorance. Like, when you don't know how scary something should be, like you just kind of walking through it without any idea, like, hey, you probably shouldn't be this comfortable and this chill about it. Like, you should probably be a little bit more worried. Um, but I only started with what I had, which was $200. My wife's a teacher. I was a counselor at the time. We're not making a bunch of money, right? We're both in public service to some degree. So I only had $200. So I just had to build off that $200. And so it was great because it allowed me to get that food and beverage experience as the concept grew, as more non-alcoholic products became available, as this whole vision. So I wasn't able to start with what I wanted to build in my mind. In my mind's eye, I imagine this beautiful bar with, glassware and music and lights, but all I could afford was a folding table and a backyard space. And that's really what Sans Bar was the first 6 months. It was in the back of a hair salon slash antique shop. Strange combination.
That's fabulous.
But I made it work. I made it work with folding tables and plastic cups until it could become the thing that I wanted it to be.
I love that story. And so people came.
People came, and I mean, and I remember right before we got our brick and mortar location, my mom came into town to help kind of manage things, and we had T-shirts made, and people were trying to buy T-shirts. It was a glorious night, 50 people. It's, like right before it gets blazing hot in Texas, and just this rainstorm just opened up and just dumped, an entire ocean on our bar in the backyard, and people were running, and I was like, oh my gosh. We got to find a place. This is great. I mean, there was over 100 people in this backyard. It was really taking off back then, 2018. It was really taking off, but there was a need, and so I looked around and I found a space, and I stayed in that space until April of last year when we decided to move downtown. We found another building with this great partner that does fitness activations across Austin, and that's our new home, and we're there now, and it's fantastic.
Okay, so I've read all about it, that this is like the first in North America. Um, did you start getting press early on, or was that something that sort of built as you went?
I didn't even again, one of those things, like, you didn't even know. People are like, who's your PR agency? Like, who's your PR? I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know what a press release is. Like, I had to like look stuff up. I was just very fortunate, and I've been very fortunate, that the universe continues to just make available to me these incredible opportunities, and I've been able to get on stages. I think the the one thing that makes all of it work is to just continue to put yourself out there. I say yes to everything. I say
Mhm.
yes to every podcast, yes to every interview. I cannot tell you how many times a semester I interview for a student, like a small local college in New Mexico or Idaho. Like, hey, I'd love to interview you. I say yes. I say yes to everything. And I think that has allowed me to, first of all, that's great media training, right? I learned how to do the media thing, and then also it just creates more digital footprint for me. So yeah, I literally had no experience with any of it, and I've just been very fortunate to get some tremendous press.
That's awesome. So, Chris, tell me now, when you took it from lemonade stand in the backyard to an actual bar, I want to understand a little bit better about who comes, why they come, what the atmosphere is like. Like, we talk a lot at Sober Life Rocks about sober inclusivity. This is completely alcohol free at
Mhm.
your bar. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so I would say that, and this is how we kind of, as we're training bartenders, the metric that we use is if you can walk into Sands Bar at any point on a Thursday, Friday night, and you close your eyes and it sounds like any other bar in America, that's how we know we're doing the right thing. We want this to look, sound, feel, maybe not smell, but we want it to be mostly a bar, right? We want it to be a bar. And the way that we do that is we have drinks that I feel are great, really tasty. Again, that was something that kind of grew up with me as I was learning how to make great drinks. I was growing my business acumen, and so it's all kind of come together with the culmination of the past 6 or 7 years. The drinks are better because I'm getting better at making drinks. Um, I think there's a welcoming environment, and because everyone's sober, there's a I don't even know I don't have the language for it, but you just know. There's a very animal part in all of us that just knows when we're safe.
Mm,
And I think that that's what people sense when they walk in, is that there's this feeling of safety, that you're going to be seen and heard. That so much of what we do is make drinks, but we just talk and make connections with people. That's really what the Sandspars experience is all about.
mm. And so is it just sober people who come?
Say that again.
Is it just sober people who come?
Oh, just so no, actually, I would say, and just again, anecdotally, that it's about 75% of people that come to Sands Bar are not sober. They don't identify as being sober. Most times when we talk to folks, they are just taking a night off, or they're coming to downtown for a show and they're stopping in for drinks, or they were at a show and they're just, kind of winding down and don't want to go home, don't want to have coffee. And so they come into our bar and they might have had a glass of wine or two, but they recognize and respect that this is a place of alcohol abstinence. And it's wonderful that I've had to kick one person out, and in 6 or 7 years, that's not bad.
No.
Um, but yeah, because I think people really do, they recognize that this is not like everywhere else. It feels different. It feels special. And we love educating people, and people can taste. We have all the spirits and all the things. We also have a lot of drinks, and I think this is important to say. Um, Not all the drinks require a spirit alternative. I feel like a lot of people aren't in a place where beers and wines and non-alcoholic spirits are what is right for them. And I totally agree with that. If that's your journey, I respect it. It took me 10 years, literally 10 years of sobriety before I ever thought about touching a non-alcoholic beer. I just wasn't ready. So our menu is inclusive in that way as well.
Mhm. And have you ever had anybody come in who didn't realize it was alcohol free?
Yes.
And what
Especially
happened?
especially now that we're downtown. It happens a lot more than before. When we were on the east side of Austin, you had to kind of go, you had to be there. You had to. We were on a row of bars, but it felt like that was less likely. Now it happens all the time.
Uh-huh.
In fact, last weekend, someone sat down, it's like, I have a vodka soda. I'm like, about that. I got the soda part, but the vodka, I'm fresh out. It's like, look, I don't want to tell you this, but this is an alcohol-free bar. And some people, mostly men, get mad. And it's mostly men. Men get mad. For some reason, they feel like they're being duped or tricked.
Yep.
But most of the times, people end up staying. They're like, oh, wow, I don't, that's not what I was looking for. But you know what? Now that I'm here, and I'm here to like, we do a comedy night. Austin's become this comedy town. So we have these great, amazing comics, and people will come for the show thinking it's a regular bar. And they're like, oh, so do you mean that these beers are non-alcoholic? Like, yeah, they're non-alcoholic. Well, I guess I'll have a beer. Just
Yeah.
it's amazing to see people do that. I rarely have people just walk out, storm out. Even people who feel kind of duped are just more confused than anything. They're just like, how did I walk in here and not realize that this was or have my first beer, which happens. People have a beer and they're like, wait a second, this is not. You're like,
You know what I love about that though? I mean, one of our big missions at Sober Life Rocks is to begin to help the media industry recognize that these after events that they host with the black bar that just comes rolling out and the loud music that gets cranked on, that's not the only way. And in fact, it's detrimental in many cases to good networking.
Mhm.
And I've
Absolutely.
talked to so many people who are sober-ish or not, I mean, just regular alcohol drinkers who say, yeah, I want that first drink, maybe a second, but I would love to be able to switch to something fun, non-alcoholic afterwards. It's just when the only option is Coke or club soda,
Yeah.
they're going to have another drink and then another drink and end up the next morning wishing that they hadn't. So
Absolutely.
I love the idea that people mistakenly walk in, try this non-alcoholic offering, and are happy.
Yeah, they're mostly happy. I find that most times people, especially when we do like events. So like the event that's coming to mind is the Texas Bar Association. So they invite us to do their holiday party in December, and so it's a bunch of Texas attorneys and this big guy with a literal like, and I don't like to lean into cliches, but this was a cliche, cliche Texan lawyer, big man. And I'll have a vodka tonic. And I was like, okay, well, come right up. And I actually, had tonic, I had vodka, make it. And I don't think he got that it was non-alcoholic. He was 2 drinks in. He's like, these are amazing. And I said, well, they're non-alcoholic. What are you telling me? These are non-alcoholic? I said, yes, sir. These are. He's like, you know what? That's not bad. I said, it isn't. And we had a conversation kind of like that, just like when you are able to do business in a way where you have all of your mental focus and clarity and sharpness, you're less likely to make mistakes. And we were talking, he was like, oh yeah, I've seen this person do that and this. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens when alcohol becomes central to these experiences. And I think that, again, just like I was misusing alcohol for connection, for community, I think that corporate America uses alcohol as a currency.
Mhm.
And again, I don't mean to harp on the legal profession here, but in that world, it seems it's like like a litmus test. Like if you can
Yeah.
handle alcohol, you can handle stress. And the medical field is like almost a gateway, like a way to speed up to like relaxation. Like I only have a certain amount of time before my next shift. I better get drunk quickly. Bunch of shots, and it's currency. It's a way to like bend time. Like there's so many different ways that we misuse it, alcohol. And alcohol only has one real purpose, and that's to numb. And that's, when we try to put alcohol into categories it doesn't belong, I think that's when we face problems.
Well, and right now in the country, I mean, there's a lot more discussion around mental health challenges, depression, anxiety. People during COVID, like just locked up in their spaces and drank heavily. Have you read about or seen any information about that correlation where we are today with the mental health and this drinking culture that we have?
I don't know any date off top of my head, and I apologize, but
Okay.
I would tend to imagine there's some pretty good stuff out there. There's probably some really good research out there that I need to dig into, because I just the second you said that, I thought about all these people that I know who um, the pandemic just did a number on, and I don't think they even realized, how deep things got for them,
Yeah.
and being isolated and away from the work. I mean, as much as work from home was a beautiful thing, it was tough for a lot of people because there was no break in the
Yeah.
alcohol use. It was just wake up and drink.
Yep. And when you were talking about that business about alcohol being sort of the currency of connection in people's minds, and we've broken all those connections, then the alcohol use becomes something entirely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it becomes that like anxiety cure all, which is really just stuffing everything inside of us. Yeah.
It's a number, right? It's an anxiety number. So it numbs our awareness of the anxiety. It's not curing. Just like, again, I had this idea. I really did believe that it was curing or treating the anxiety, and all it was doing was just disrupting my awareness of the anxiety, and always disrupting the awareness of my relationship problems or my financial problems. And also, all it can do is just numb my awareness.
Yeah. So, Chris, I want to just now pivot because since you started this bar, since you've gotten so much press, you have taken that and run with it in terms of sort of the whole alcohol-free community. Can you share a little bit about what you've done in those areas?
Yeah. So I just decided that what was happening in Austin should happen everywhere. And so I was like, I'm gonna go on tour. I didn't realize you needed a whole like budget. And I'm like, look, I'm just gonna go. And so I just talked to a lot of people in a lot of different places, had a lot of conversations that went nowhere, a lot of conversations that went nowhere. But some conversations went somewhere. And I ended up going in 2019 to like Anchorage, Alaska, like that, like randomly, like I'm gonna go to Alaska, which was beautiful. New York, I had a pop up on the Lower East Side in 2019. Just wherever I could find a partner or someone that wanted to do an event, I was just traveling, and I think I hit up like 15 different markets in 2019, and then in 2020, before of course the world changed, I was 6 cities into that tour. So um, touring around and kind of being an evangelizer for non-alc, and the need for alcohol-free spaces is kind of how I've made my name. And it's much more about the concept than the brand. So it's not that I'm trying to create a bunch of Starbucks, a bunch of Sans bars everywhere. Because everyone's like, aren't you just going to be like the next Starbucks? I'm like, no, I actually don't think that that's good. I think what I want to create is a bunch of individual programs, bottle shops, bars that are successful. And I think that bodes well for the future. And
Mhm.
my only goal, is to have my kids were 8 and 9 up there. In 10 years' time, I want them to be able to walk into an establishment and the menu be amazing, have amazing drinks. And someone says, would you like alcohol or no alcohol? For the same drink, right? It's the same offering, the same
Mhm.
beautiful beverage. It's just one has alcohol and one doesn't. And I think the only way to achieve that is to have diversity in the marketplace, and it look like different iterations of the same thing across multiple markets.
I just got chills when you said that. It's like when you go to Europe and they are offering you water and they say with gas or not, with bubbles or not,
Mhm.
with alcohol or not. That is a beautiful question.
And it should be that simple. It should be that simple. And as a sidebar, same thing should happen for the plant-based market. That someday be able to go into a restaurant and they offer you the whatever meal, and they ask you if you want it with a plant-based alternative or with meat. Like it's just going to be it's a movement of more where we are individualizing what we can offer consumers, and I think that that's the most amazing thing, and that's why this is different than prohibition, because prohibition was like less, like no alcohol, less alcohol, and what we're saying is that this is the movement of more options, more accessibility for people who have medical needs in that dictate that they can't consume alcohol, or who have religious dictates that say that they can't consume alcohol. There should be equally accessible beverages for those people, and that's what this movement is. It's about more.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, we talk about sober inclusivity all the time, and it's not about we want to change your habits, because we know sober people are a smaller percentage of the population. Somewhere around 15 to 13% of Americans say that they're sober. More than that are probably sober-ish or sober curious. But that's not enough to say, hey, we need to change everything.
Yeah.
No, we simply want to change the conversation. We simply want to normalize these choices and have it be inclusive so that everybody can have these networking, have these connections, regardless of what's in your cup. Who cares?
Right. And I think that's why that parity is so important, so that when we get to that point in society, it won't matter what's in my physical cup or what's in my hand. In a beer will look like a beer, right? It won't matter what kind of beer. And I think we're getting there. I think we're moving at a glacial pace. I wish we were already there, but just from where I started to where I'm at today, it's been remarkable, and I hope this has been the next 10 years, 20 years, moving the needle closer.
We are right there with you. We're gonna walk hand in hand together doing this.
Absolutely.
The last thing I want to ask you is, an awful lot of people that are listening or are members of our group, they call them, or we've given them the phrase of sober wingmen. Sober wingmen are the people who are absolutely happy with what they drink alcohol wise, but they're so supportive of this movement, this discussion. What would you say, just having sprung this on you, might be some ways that sober wingmen can get more involved or can be part of this conversation or can support their sober friends?
Yeah, I love that. I think that allyship is the way to make any movement permanent, right? It's always the people, right? The people who are most impacted become the most vocal. They take to the streets. They ask for this and they ask for that, and what they're asking for is usually something around like human rights and just being treated like a normal person. I think we're asking for the same thing here, but things don't really start to change until allies which life would be pretty much the same, get into the streets and stand along with them. And I think that is what allyship can do for people who choose not to consume alcohol. Being an ally and being a good ally looks like advocating for non-alcoholic beverages wherever you go. Movie theater, state baseball stadium, fashion week, wherever you are, there should be more non-alcoholic options. So regardless of whether you're the person you are winging for is present, wherever you go, ask what the non-alcoholic option is. That's a huge thing. And you know what's going to happen? That server may just file that away as like, that's interesting. People keep asking for that. They will talk to their manager, who will talk to the general manager who does the purchasing, and they will have more on the menu. The second thing I would say is just purchase those products when you can. Vote with your dollars, right? Even if you're out and you're personally not someone who needs to abstain from alcohol, just by purchasing the basil hibiscus offering on the menu, it says that there's a demand there, right? And it's $8 or $10 at a time, but the way that you vote with your dollars is such an important thing, right? We need to know that these things will find a place on the menu. And then the last thing I would say is to listen. Listen, because I think that a lot of people who are abstaining from alcohol for whatever reason get talked at a lot. And we never really stop to ask them like how that journey is going. Um, I think a lot of people um, just want to be seen as like anyone else. And I feel like if you're going to be a wing person for someone who is alcohol free, uh, listening is a huge gift. It allows that person to feel heard and seen in a world that ultimately, like you said, since we're in the minority here, that ultimately doesn't want you to be seen or heard. So listening is the greatest gift you can give someone.
Mm, I just love that. And I love all the things that you're sharing. I would spend another 3 hours talking to you. But before we kind of wrap up, I did want to ask, was there anything in particular that you would like to share? Any inspirational message or area that you see that we can all be part of and join in with what you're doing?
Not really. Just thank you so much for having me on. I love this conversation. So much of what I think I'm going to take away from this conversation, especially, is the understanding that every step in our life, there's some kind of catalyst.
Mhm.
There's an agent of change in each of those things. For me, it was, the alcohol was this tool that I was using, and that tool worked until it didn't. And then it was community that got me back into to like normal life and understanding like I'm gonna live and I need to go find a career. And then it was, there's at all these points in my life, there's these beautiful kind of green lights that encourage me to move forward. And I think that we would all do well to look back at our lives through the lens of those catalysts. Like, what was the thing that got me to get into this profession, or got me to think about the way that I approach physical wellness in this way? Thinking about those things are such an important exercise. And so thank you for giving me that time and space today to really explore things in that way, because I really needed it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, quick question. What's your favorite board game?
Favorite board game? Ooh. um, I don't know. I don't know. I just because I just learned how to play Monopoly. I never played Monopoly before, and someone's like, "Okay, you're 40 years old. I think it's time to learn to play Monopoly." So I would have to say Monopoly because it's my the newest game I learned.
That's a totally legit answer because when we all learn it, it is the great obsession. How do you get a hold
Oh,
of a place?
it is, and I didn't realize. I don't even know why I didn't play. I just felt like it was. But it's fun, and then you just realize like, ooh, I'm a little bit more shrewd than I thought I was. Like I
Mhm.
am, I am playing rather competitively here. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But the best games I love are any kind of games where you have cards and you ask people questions. Like I love any of those kind of games where there's no real points or no real winner, but it's just asking really great questions of each other.
Okay, you've met just a few very interesting people. What's one of the most interesting people that you've met and why?
Oh, oof. I met Dr. Fauci. That was cool. But no, I hands down, this is just I was at Yale doing a happy hour in Connecticut, and I met Ruby Warrington. Now, I've met Ruby Warrington before, but for those of you who don't know, Ruby Warrington coined the phrase sober curious. She
Oh,
created the term sober curious. And I was sitting at dinner with Ruby, and I'm like, you know what? Without you, I don't think I would have a career. Like the idea of being sober curious is what made Sans Bar possible. If there was no sober curious, there would be no Sans Bar. So yes, I've met some pretty cool people. Um, yeah, I've had some pretty cool interactions, but Ruby changed my life. She changed everyone's life. Sober curious is a global phenomenon, and so
yeah.
I owe her a lot. Yeah.
Well, I'd ask you some other questions, but that was the perfect ending. I love that so much. So, here at Morning Smiles, we want you to grab your favorite beverage, be it a mocktail, a coffee, or simply good vibes, and let's embark on this journey together. Remember, no one has to feel alone at a meeting, and normalizing sober choices starts right here, right now.
Thank you for joining us on Morning Smiles podcast. Remember, every decision you make today shapes the smiles of your tomorrows. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social. No one needs to do this alone. Here's to making choices that brighten your world and your morning smiles.